Before we begin, I need to say this clearly. This is not a story about monsters. There are no shadows crawling on walls, no footsteps running down hallways. What you're about to hear is something far worse, because it's real. The events in this story were shared anonymously by a former 911 dispatcher. Names were changed, locations were altered, not to protect him, but to protect anyone who might still be listening. Emergency dispatchers hear people on the worst days of their lives. They hear voices that are terrified, voices that are desperate, and sometimes voices that never stop calling. This story takes place over several nights, 6 moments that still follow him years later. So if you're listening alone, maybe turn on a light. And if your phone rings while this story is playing, you might want to think twice before answering. This is I Answered a 911 Call That Was Never Meant for Me. I've told this story only once before. Not to the police, not to my family, not even to my therapist. I'm telling it now because enough time has passed that I don't think it can follow me anymore. At least, I hope it can't. I worked as a 911 dispatcher in a small county in northern Oregon, the kind of place where the trees outnumber the people and the silence at night feels heavier than it should. If you've never worked emergency dispatch, let me explain something most people don't realize. We don't just hear emergencies, we sit inside them. Every scream, every whispered plea, every breath someone takes while they're deciding whether they're about to die. And most nights are boring. That night wasn't. It was a Tuesday. I remember that clearly because Tuesdays were usually the quietest. No weekend drunks, no bar fights, just the occasional alarm trip or a lonely caller who didn't really need help. My shift started at 10 p.m. By 2 a.m., the room felt the way it always did late at night. Dim, humming softly, lit only by monitors and red LED indicators. There were 6 desks in the dispatch center. Only 2 of us were working. The other dispatcher, Karen, was on the opposite side of the room, headphones on, scrolling through her screen with the slow rhythm of someone fighting sleep. I had just taken a sip of burnt coffee, the kind that tastes like regret, when my line lit up. That's the first thing that was wrong. The call didn't come through the usual queue. No county code, no GPS ping, no ANI/ALI data, just a single green light. I remember frowning at the screen. That never happens. For a second, I thought the system had glitched. It wasn't unheard of. Our equipment was older than it should have been. Then the headset clicked, and I heard breathing. Not loud, not frantic, controlled, like someone holding their breath and letting it out slowly through their nose. I followed protocol. 911, what's your emergency? The breathing stopped instantly. Complete silence. I waited. Sometimes callers freeze. Sometimes they hang up. Then I heard a voice. It was quiet, close to the microphone, almost careful. You already know where I am. I sat up straighter in my chair. I don't. Sir or ma'am, I need your location. Another pause. Then the voice spoke again. You're sitting under the flickering light. My eyes immediately lifted to the ceiling. The fluorescent panel above my desk flickered once, then steadied. My stomach tightened. Listen, I said, keeping my voice neutral. If this is a prank call, you spilled coffee on your desk earlier, didn't clean it up, just wiped it with your sleeve. My hand slowly slid across the surface of the desk. The stain was still there. My pulse picked up. Who is this? I asked. The voice exhaled. You always ask that. I muted my mic and looked over at Karen. She was still staring at her screen. Didn't look concerned, didn't look aware of anything unusual. I unmuted. You need to tell me where you are, I said. The voice lowered. I'm not supposed to. A chill ran up my arms. Why not? Another pause. Then, because the last one who told someone stopped answering. The line went dead. Not disconnected, just gone. The green light vanished. No call log, no record, no trace. I sat there, staring at the screen for a long time. Karen finally glanced over. "You good?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just static." She went back to her screen, but I didn't, because above my monitor, the digital clock flickered. 2:17 a.m., and for just half a second, it showed a time that hadn't happened yet. I didn't file a report about the call. That might sound irresponsible, but in dispatch, you learn quickly which things get written down and which things make people look at you differently. There was no record of the call, no log, no timestamp. On paper, it never happened. So I told myself the truth I needed to hear. It was a glitch, a stress reaction, a tired brain connecting dots that weren't really there. That's what I told myself while I finished the shift. That's what I told myself while driving home through the trees, headlights cutting thin tunnels through the fog. And that's what I told myself when I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. But I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard breathing that wasn't mine. The next night, I came in early. I checked the system logs myself. There were no phantom calls, no internal transfers, no anomalies. Everything was clean. Too clean. At 2:58 a.m., Karen took her break, leaving me alone in the dispatch room. The building always sounded different when you were by yourself. The hum of electricity grew louder. The air felt thicker. I rolled my shoulders, adjusted my headset, and stared at the screens. At exactly 2:17 a.m., every monitor in front of me flickered. Not off, not on, just refreshed. Then a call came through. This one had a location. County Road 12, mile marker 6. Before I could even answer, the voice spoke. Single vehicle rollover, blue pickup, male driver, severe head trauma. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. That wasn't how calls worked. "Sir, is this happening right now?" I asked. "Yes," the voice replied, calmly. "Are you calling from the scene?" "No." My pulse quickened. "Then how do you know this?" The voice paused, then said something that made my stomach drop. "Because you're about to hear him scream." 3 seconds later, the emergency line lit up. Different call, same location. I answered it, and the screaming started, exactly as described. I dispatched EMS and fire with hands that didn't feel like mine. When the call ended, I pulled up the first line again. Still connected, still counting 0 seconds. "Who are you?" I asked quietly. "You've already spoken to me," the voice said. "Just not yet." Cold spread through my chest. "What do you want?" Another pause. Then, "I want you to listen." The line clicked. Audio began playing. At first, I didn't recognize it. Then I did. It was a 911 call from 3 years earlier, a house fire, mother and 2 kids trapped upstairs. I remembered that call. I remembered the way the line went silent halfway through. The recording stopped. The voice returned. "You handled that one professionally," it said, even when they stopped answering. My hands were shaking now. "How are you playing archived calls?" I demanded. "I'm not playing them," the voice corrected. "I'm routing them." I swallowed. Routing them from where? From when? The room felt colder. "You can't do that. That's not possible." The voice didn't argue. It didn't need to. "Check your screen," it said. I looked down. A new call was queued. Timestamp, 2:21 a.m. Caller ID, unknown. Before I answered, the voice spoke one last time. "This one is yours." The line disconnected. The call timer began to count. When I answered, the woman on the other end was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She kept repeating the same sentence. "He's standing in the road. He's standing in the road." I dispatched patrol units. 3 minutes later, a deputy radioed in. "Pedestrian struck. Fatal." I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. That call hadn't been predicted. It had been scheduled. I pulled the archived logs again. That pedestrian call, it now showed as internally transferred from my line. I didn't go home after the shift. I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching the building through the windshield. Every window was dark, but for just a second, I thought I saw movement inside, like someone walking past the dispatch desks. After the second night, I stopped convincing myself it was just work stress, because stress doesn't follow you home. I didn't tell anyone what was happening. Not Karen, not my supervisor, not even my girlfriend at the time. Some things feel dangerous the moment you say them out loud, like naming them gives them permission to exist. I drove home with the radio off. The road through the forest was empty, headlights illuminating trunks that all looked the same after a while. I kept checking the rearview mirror, not because I saw something, because I felt like I should. When I got home, the house felt wrong immediately. Not broken into, not disturbed, just aware. You know how your house sounds when it's empty. Pipes ticking, wood contracting, distant traffic. That night, it felt like everything was listening. I locked the door, checked the windows, did the same routine I'd done 100 times before. Still, I slept with the light on. The next day at work, nothing happened. No strange calls, no flickering clocks. Almost worse than when something does happen. By the time my shift ended, I was exhausted. I told myself that whatever it was, maybe it had stopped. That night, I fell asleep without realizing it. I woke up at 2:16 a.m. No alarm, no noise. Just that sudden, sharp awareness that someone is awake when they shouldn't be. My phone was on the nightstand. The screen lit up. No caller ID. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then, my landline rang. I hadn't given that number to anyone. I sat up slowly and answered it. I didn't say hello. I didn't need to. "Your bedroom door is closed tonight," the voice said. My throat tightened. "You usually don't do that." I didn't move. "How do you know where I live?" I whispered. The voice sounded closer than before, clearer. "Because you keep leaving the back window unlocked." I turned my head slowly toward the hallway. The house was dark, quiet. "Stop," I said. "You need to stop calling me." A pause. Then, "You said that last time, too." My heart hammered. "There is no last time," I snapped. "This is the first call you've made to my house." Another pause. Longer this time. "No," the voice said gently. "It's just the first one you remember." A sound came through the line. Not static. Footsteps. Slow, careful, on hardwood. They stopped, right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. "So loud when you're scared," the voice whispered. The doorknob didn't turn. The footsteps faded. The call ended. I didn't sleep again that night. The next evening, I left every light on in the house. I sat on the couch with my phone in my hand. At 2:17 a.m., it rang. This time, it wasn't the unknown number. It was my own. I answered. My own voice came through the speaker, breathing, then speaking. 911, what's your emergency? I dropped the phone. It didn't disconnect. The voice, my voice, kept talking, describing my living room, the couch, the lamp, the way I was sitting. Then it said something I hadn't told anyone. You're thinking about running. The call ended. I moved out the next day. Didn't pack, didn't explain, just left. But the calls didn't stay behind.
I stayed with a friend after I left the house. I told him I was dealing with some work stress, that I needed a few days. He didn't ask questions. People rarely do when you look exhausted enough. The calls stopped for 2 nights. I started to believe the distance mattered, that whatever was happening was tied to the house, or the land, or maybe just my head. On the 3rd night, I went back to work. Walking into the dispatch center felt like stepping into a memory I didn't trust anymore. Everything looked the same. Same desks, same monitors, same hum of electricity. But something felt off, like the room was expecting me. I logged in. At 2:14 a.m., the system locked up. All inputs froze. Then a call came through. Internal transfer. No location, no data. I answered it and heard myself breathing. Not recorded, not distorted, live. "Hello?" my voice said. I didn't respond. I couldn't. "I know you're there," my voice continued. "You always hesitate right here." The sound of a chair moving, a headset being adjusted. "I don't have much time," my voice said. "It's learning faster now." My hands were numb. "What is it?" I whispered. A pause. Then, "It listens when we listen." The screens around me began to change. Every monitor displayed the same thing, the dispatch room, from above, like a security camera that didn't exist. I saw myself sitting at my desk, but the timing was wrong. The movements were delayed, unnatural. "Why do you look like that?" I asked. "That's not me," my voice replied. "That's what answers when we can't." The image on the screen smiled. I felt something cold brush my ear. The line disconnected. All the screens went black. Then the emergency queue lit up. Hundreds of calls, stacked, waiting. I logged out and walked out of the building without telling anyone. Behind me, the phones kept ringing.
I didn't quit that night. I should have. But fear does strange things to your sense of responsibility. Instead of filing paperwork or calling a supervisor, I went home and started digging. Dispatchers aren't supposed to access archived audio outside of work, but after years on the job, you learn where things are kept. Who forgets to log out, which systems still run on passwords no one's changed since the early 2000s. At 3 in the morning, sitting in my friend's spare bedroom, I logged into the county's emergency archive database. I searched for internal transfers. There were thousands. Most of them were old, some older than me. Calls that never properly terminated. Calls that ended without a disconnect signal. Calls that the system flagged but no human ever reviewed. I clicked one at random. The audio began immediately. A woman was whispering, "I think someone's in my house." I recognized her voice. Not personally, professionally. She'd called years ago, said she heard footsteps upstairs. Patrol arrived to an empty home. She never called again. The recording didn't end where I remembered it. After the officers cleared the house, after the dispatcher tried to reassure her, there was more. Breathing. Then a second voice. Low, calm, familiar. I felt sick. It was the same voice, the one that had been calling me. I shut the laptop, sat in silence, then opened it again. I searched by dispatcher ID. Mine. There were archived calls assigned to me that I didn't remember taking, dates I'd been on vacation, times I hadn't been on shift, all marked the same way. Internal transfer, active. I clicked the oldest one. The audio crackled. A man was crying. "I can hear it breathing," he said. "It's right behind the door." The dispatcher spoke. Not me. Someone else. I checked the ID. A name I didn't recognize. Employee number inactive. Status deceased. The man on the call screamed. The dispatcher stayed calm, professional. Then the dispatcher stopped talking. The caller kept screaming, and screaming, and screaming. The recording didn't stop. The timestamp kept moving. Hours, days, years. The system never cut the line. That's when I understood. The system didn't record emergencies. It preserved them. Every call that never properly ended, every moment where help didn't arrive in time, they stayed, listening, waiting, learning. I felt my phone vibrate. A call. No caller ID. I answered. "You found them," the voice said. "What are you?" I asked. A pause. Then, "We are what stays when no one answers." My stomach turned. "You're not human," I whispered. "No," it said. "We're unfinished." The line went quiet. Then dozens of voices began speaking at once, overlapping, pleading, crying, begging me to pick up. I threw the phone across the room. It kept ringing. I resigned the next morning. Didn't give notice. Didn't explain. I left my badge on the desk and walked out before anyone could stop me. I changed my number, changed cities, changed my name. For a while, it worked. Months passed without a single call. I started sleeping again, started believing that distance mattered, that whatever it was tied to the system. I was wrong. 3 years later, my phone rang. No caller ID. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then again. Then my landline rang. I picked it up. 911, what's your emergency? The voice said. It was calm, professional, familiar. I realized then why it had let me go. It didn't need me anymore. It had learned. The line went dead. My phone rang, and rang, and rang. I don't answer unknown numbers now, because some calls never stop ringing. The dispatcher who shared this story no longer works in emergency services. He's moved more than once, changed his number more times than he can remember. He doesn't answer unknown calls, not because he's afraid of scammers, but because he learned something the hard way, that some voices don't belong to the living, and some systems were never meant to remember. If you've ever called for help and felt like no one was really there, maybe now you know why. Thank you for listening. And remember, just because a call ends doesn't mean it ever really hung up.